Just under 3 weeks ago, we got a surprise announcement out of nowhere that 2018's Kickstarted bonus game, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, would be getting a direct numbered sequel. The first Curse of the Moon was a pretty good game that invoked 1989's Castlevania 3, while bringing in more modern design sensibilities and conveniences. It was a great kickoff to the Bloodstained series that continued on with the main attraction, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. But with this surprise 8-bit inspired sequel appearing from the ether, it's easy to wonder, is it a worthy sequel to the first game, or was it announced so close to release for a reason? Well, courtesy of developer and publisher Inti Creates, I was able to check out the game on Steam and get those answers. To give context to my experience up front, the Bloodstained series was my main introduction to Castlevania-like games, whether it be the more platformer-oriented style like Castlevania 3, seen here in Curse of the Moon 2, or the more modern Metroidvania style that Symphony of the Night helped kick off. The only comparable game I'd played before them was Guacamelee, which I enjoyed, so unlike a lot of people covering this game, my lens will be that of a very relative newcomer to this style of game. If you're also a newcomer, rest assured that the Bloodstained series is a great foot in the door. Going into the first Curse of the Moon, I had no expectations as someone with no interest in the classic Castlevania style, but through its level design, forgiving casual mode with infinite lives, and well-done style, I found it to be a surprisingly engaging game, even though a lot of the callbacks and the like were completely lost on me. In the first Curse of the Moon, you take control of a character named Zangetsu and recruit 3 additional characters throughout the first 3 stages that you can instantly swap between at any time, each with their own abilities and quirks to help you navigate through alternate paths. You also had the choice to not recruit them and could even kill them to absorb new powers, but that's neither here nor there. You'd work your way through 8 stages of increasing difficulty, fighting a boss at the end of each one, until you roll credits and begin working your way to unlocking new difficulties and a boss rush mode. So with that said, Curse of the Moon 2 is also a game where you start as Zangetsu and play your way through 8 stages, each with a boss at the end, and have 3 characters join you that you can instantly swap between at any point until you roll credits. It is very much following the first game's template, to the point that some assets seem to be identical, with some objects and enemies you'll instantly recognize if you played the first game. I'm putting this bluntly to set your expectations a bit, though you likely already know what you're getting into by now. But while it's very much Curse of the Moon again, it does basically everything a proper sequel should, and improves on just about every facet of the experience to craft what I think is undeniably a better game. Just about any bullet point you can mention is improved here. The sprite complexity and detail in backgrounds is more pleasing to look at, for starters. While I think some of the cool theming from the first game is lost, I certainly remember the train station and pirate ship levels even now. Curse of the Moon 2 is easier on the eyes, and I definitely prefer its heads-up display at the top. And to that end, more importantly, not only did the levels look better, but they play better too. On the whole, I found more of the screens and the levels in this game to be more engaging and varied. You'll see a lot of familiar enemies scattered throughout them, but there's more here overall to keep you on your toes, which made for a much better play experience. It's hard to quantify the improvements, but I found the platforming to just feel more smartly designed, whereas the first game has more basic layouts to contend with. Of course, the levels would be nothing without interesting characters to play through them as. Most of the characters follow a similar structure. They each have certain attributes, a weapon that behaves differently, and then 3 sub-weapons that you can discover and swap between throughout the levels that use weapon points when wielded. So for example, Zangetsu basically returns with his moveset from the first game. His sword swings out to a short distance but deals a lot of damage, and then for his sub-weapons he has a whip that hits upward diagonally, a magic explosion that rests on the ground, and a temporary power-up to his sword which can help you wreck some bosses and annoying enemies. Then there's Dominique, a character who can jump rather high and attacks with a spear that can be aimed upward or to the side, and even pointed downward to bounce on enemies Scrooge McDuck style. Her sub-weapons range from generating a healing item, using some ranged magic, and even outright reviving other playable characters with a one-use spell if you can find it in a level. After her is Robert, who doesn't have a lot of health or a great jump, but can wall jump, go prone, and even crawl around on the ground and fire his musket all the way across the screen. His sub-weapons focus on dishing out a lot of damage, but they use a lot of weapon points, so you really gotta make it count when you use them. Overall, I found him to be best used in levels, but due to his low health and awkward movement, I almost never used him for bosses, even though on paper he should be good against them. That's probably just due to me being bad at the game. But I've buried the lead here, as the last new playable character is named Hachi. He's a corgi who pilots a magic mech suit. I can't even make this up. He has the highest health, he can glide, and can traverse certain obstacles without taking damage while dishing out a good amount of damage. To help make up for how much of a tank he has only one sub-weapon, and it's to be able to go completely invincible at a very demanding sub-weapon cost per second. Even with that, I was still able to tank a lot of hits and bosses, making him invaluable. All in all, these 3 new characters are probably Curse of the Moon 2's biggest draw, as it's the easiest thing to point to that separates it from the first game. I really enjoyed each of them and actually kinda prefer them to the 3 other characters from Curse 1. Except maybe Hachi, no character felt overly powerful for any given situation, and I often found myself switching between them and experimenting to see who was best for any given enemy type or scenario. Now, I'm going to give a spoiler warning here for something that I don't think is a spoiler. It's on the game's website. But just in case, this way I can say I warned you. But the 3 characters from the first game, Miriam, Alfred, and Jebel, return and are playable for certain stretches of this game. But to get into that, I need to talk about this game's structuring. The first Curse of the Moon encouraged multiple playthroughs of the game's 8 levels by letting the player discover different stipulations. A player could choose to not recruit the other characters and play solely as Zangetsu for a challenge run, and the player could also choose to murder them and gain new powers, like I said at the beginning. It was a pretty nifty, almost secretive way to hide extra replay value and difficulty to the game. Curse of the Moon 2 takes a different structure by involving the story more directly and splitting the game up into episodes. You'll first play episode 1, and upon finishing all 8 stages, Dominique is held captive. So in episode 2, you play through the 8 stages again to try to rescue her, this time with Robert and Hachi in tow from the beginning. I didn't find many obvious differences in the levels, perhaps some different enemy placement here and there, so you're mostly just playing the game again as it is. It's a cool decision for the first few levels, as you probably wanted to go back to those stages with the additional characters anyway, but then past the first few, you're kind of just playing the same game again up until hitting a different final boss. And depending on if you found certain objects in certain stages, upon finishing episode 2, you'll either get a bad ending where you don't rescue Dominique and then play through what's basically a hard mode of the game with the first game's cast, or you go on to episode final and play a weird version of the game where you're limited to 2 set specific characters per stage. I think on paper these ideas worked, but in execution it's not as fun or organic as how the first game presented it, and in my opinion is probably the only real way this game is a step down from the first one. Every other aspect I found to be just flat out better, but this episode structure was something I was excited about until I actually experienced it. These games are made to be replayed over and over anyway, so I get the intent, but it just didn't gel for me. I'm curious to see how other people feel about it when they play it for sure. But again, to me, that was the only downer note of the game. I should also add that there is a local co-op mode, and thanks to Steam's online couch co-op thing, I was able to try the game out with my buddy the Golden Bolt, who was also reviewing the game, plug, and it functioned pretty well. I invited him into my episode 2 run for a bit, so we had access to 2 Zangetsus, Hachi, and Robert. While it worked from a tech standpoint, neither of us found it particularly engaging to play together. I imagine this mode is much better when you've got a Castlevania-loving buddy you can invite over, but it was more of a novelty for us, and then we both split off to just enjoy the games by ourselves again. So, that brings us back to the question at the top. Is Curse of the Moon 2 worth playing and a worthy sequel to the first game? To me, the answer is absolutely. Even if the structuring of the story throughout its episodes fell short to me, the actual core gameplay here has been smartly improved to such a degree that I couldn't possibly say no. I thought it looked better, I thought it sounded better, and I thought it played much better. Curse of the Moon 2 is the sequel I didn't expect or really even know I wanted, but I'm glad it exists. If you're looking to jump in, go back and play the first Curse of the Moon. A, because it's still a good game, and B, it'll help you appreciate just how good this is. If you're watching this and haven't played the game yet, come back and let me know how you felt about it after you have. If you've played the game, what did you think about it? So far, the Bloodstained series seems to be 3 for 3 on quality games, and I'm even more excited to see what comes next now. Whatever they toss at us next, I'll be sure to play. If you enjoyed this review, feel free to subscribe and go check out some of the other videos I've made. Otherwise, thanks for dropping by, and do take care. As ever, thanks to all the fine folk you see here for supporting me on Patreon, especially Potato Jello, Goldstormo7, Buckles Chucklo, G, Calico Plus, The Crazy Even, The Legend of Groose, Patrick Thompson, Svendelica, and Wolf Chaos On.